Mai held onto the railing of the ship as if her life depended on it. She had assumed that riding inside a human's boat would lessen her fear of the dark sea. After all, humans were known for their metal boats. While metal carriages had disappeared except for a few, human metal boats remained to this day. They were known for their fortitude, one of the few boats that could handle the raging sea of Yamal. However, the boat didn't lessen her fear on the pitch-black sky and the murderous waves hitting against the railing. The burnt gigantic sea serpent corpse lying on a scorched dark rock right beside the boat really didn't help her mental state either. "Are you sure this is a good idea?" Mai heard. She turned to look at the captain of the ship, clad in strange clothing that was only rivaled by the man his question was directed at. "Told you before, our only job is to get that herb and ditch." The old man he had been living with for the past several months or so replied nonchalantly. His so-called mandatory lab coat really didn't match the situation he was in, or any situation if she wanted to be honest. "Isaac, you are 72 years old." The captain berated him. "And? What about it, Lee? Your father is 75, yet I heard he still participates in the raid defense. He is a mercenary and a wizard. It's different." Lee groaned. "And no, don't say that you are also a wizard. You are barely level 3 in our standard. You couldn't even pass as an industrial worker if you wanted to." Lee continued without letting him speak. "Look, Lee, I know you are worried, but I will be fine. If anything happens, my assistant here will help me. She is a harpy, so she is really good at magic, unlike us apes." Mai wanted to interject, but she suddenly felt a butterfly in her stomach. She pulled herself up and vomited straight to the sea below. Some of her digestive remains fell to her wings, which were folded around her. Normally, she would be really careful at dirtying her wings, but she wasn't exactly in a normal situation. Mai started to wonder if her decision of staying with the human a month ago was a good idea, but before she could think about it, she clutched the railing yet again to empty her stomach and indirectly burn her mouth. "Mai, do you remember Isaac?" Mai dropped the book she was reading. "Yes? Anything happened to that old man?" Mai asked her mother, who was sitting near the windows overlooking the city below. The dark cityscape had slowly grown brighter in recent years as electricity started rolling in the capital. Even Mai's own bedroom seems a bit brighter after the recent breakthrough. Mai swam through her mind, going back to her childhood, back in the union of Kamaria and Terra. She remembered Isaac as the slightly unhinged weird human uncle who taught her cool tricks and tips, mostly involving explosions and firearms. Now that she thinks about it, there was always some kind of explosion whenever he was around. "Well, I was thinking that you could spend this long holiday in his place." "What?" Mai yelped. "Spending 2 months in that place?" Mai had thought she would be going to Mareva, but her mother apparently had another plan. "He is very close to our family. We helped them out during their migration and built their cities, and he raised me when I was little." Her mother paused for a moment, as if trying to grasp something left. "He used to teach me natural science of chemistry, and I can say he is both a genius and talented at teaching. Plus, you need to improve your non-combative magic." "No?" her mother asked with a smile. Mai sighed. Despite how much she hated it, she knew she couldn't just enter the university with a good score on combat magic alone. "Fine, I will consider it. Like I said, I am perfectly fine." His voice was cut off by a violent coughing and the lantern falling to the ground. Mai watched the old man in front of her, falling to yet another fit of violent coughing right in front of her. This is the 3rd time this has happened. She looked back to see the boat slowly leaving their view. According to the order, the herb they should be gathering is located around the island coast. Yet, they have been walking for so long that the boat had almost gone out of view. "Look, I could just fly up there and look it up again." Mai flew upward before Isaac could stop her. Looking down, the center of the island was covered in tall, dense trees. She couldn't stop looking at them no matter how much she had flown up here. There was something surreal about these trees that she just couldn't explain. Was it the weird way the branches flow? Or the color being off? Mai didn't know, but she knew it was strangely beautiful. While it was very beautiful, it also slightly loved her off since she couldn't see the herb they were searching for. Mai flew down to see the old man chipping away at a nearby tree. "Have you finally gone insane?" "No, not yet, but look at this." Mai took a step back as the old man showed his hand covered in black sticky substance. "The heck is that thing?" "Tar. There is tar coming out of these trees. Isaac cackled, shoving the tar inside a bottle and putting it in her bag and also his. I peeked inside his bag to see a bottle of fine-grain alcohol and a couple of water bottles, a pack of medicine kit, and a half-eaten sandwich. I was more shocked at the fact she was no longer shocked at seeing this. Look, can we just go back searching for the herb? This place creeps me out. I smelt a strange smell. It smelt almost like the expensive alcohol her mother usually bought. But this smell is, to put it bluntly, more shoot? Like a rotten beast that hadn't been properly cleaned. I turned and followed Isaac, who had gone deep inside the sea of grass. He occasionally puts sticks on the ground so they don't get lost in the grasses. When she arrived, she saw rows of yellow flowers intertwined with each other. It looked like your average flower in the backyard, but she was sure that the flowers in her backyard didn't grow on top of itself. See, it's near the coast. Isaac gleefully plucked the weird flowers. While the old man was busy plucking the weird vine-like flowers to his bag, I also plucked several of them. She planned to have a third for her friend and mother back in the capital, and the other 2/3 for her own. Now we are done, the old man said behind her. She turned to see his bag shining and bulging outward like those fruits grown in her grandmother's home in the forest. Now let's go. We don't want to make the captain wait any longer. I packed her things up and followed him when she suddenly bumped into him. What's wrong? Where is that stick from earlier? Mai's wings stretched out in alert. She hadn't heard anything since the two of them entered this field, and the stick from earlier had just completely vanished. The two fell into a silence as the forest around them fell into a silence as well. The only noise left was the leaves below the 2 feet, and the rustling sound as Isaac rummaged through his overloaded bag. The rustling sound stopped as Isaac pulled out his revolver. Mai heard something and her instinct screamed. She tackled the old man to the ground as what looks like a long, sharp spike-like object flung above them, striking a nearby tree. It pierced deep inside it, sticking in place. Behind it was a long, dark, gooey substance, connecting the spike to somewhere in the bushes. Mai and the old man looked in horror as the spike flew back toward its sender, the gooey substance rapidly pulling back the sticking spike back toward the bushes deep inside the forest. Jesus Christ, that was close, Isaac muttered under his breath. He quickly grabbed the gun on the ground and prepared to shoot. I heard a crack in the distance. The old man took longer, but when he did, he snapped his head around and shot. I covered her ear, though it was a bit too late, for her ear was already ringing. Mai's ears were still ringing, but she didn't need her ear to function to see 3 different spikes launching against the old man. She quickly tackled him back down again. She opened her wing wide and quickly cast herself to speed with the old man in her arm as another spike flew behind them. Mai gritted as she cast another spell. They were half dashing and half gliding in the moment. She wanted to just fly out of the island, but there was the old man limping along in her hand, and she was also guessing that the tall grass contributed to the spikes barely missing them. Mai saw a boulder up ahead. She swallowed the sweat dripping from her face and cast yet another spell, her wings now slowly turning black. She managed to drop behind the boulder just in time as another spike flew near them. Mai let out a sigh of relief as she looked at her wing. It's not fully damaged, thank heavens. What was that? I don't know. Mai answered. Did your gun do nothing? Isaac gritted his teeth. There was a loud screech and then those things flew out. It probably hit. Well, at least that means it damaged the thing, right? Can you try shooting it again? I would probably die, but sure. Isaac grumbled as he rustled through his bag. Can't believe I am dying here. 72 years, and I will end up on some island in the middle of nowhere. She heard him grumble. Isaac suddenly stopped his search, before looking back at the place they were standing on before. Mai followed his sight and saw the revolver laying in the ground. No. Mai heard a small thump slowly approaching their position. She wanted to cast something big, but knew that she would probably be permanently damaged in the process. In a desperate attempt, she casted a small fire in her hand, hoping the meager small light would ward off the thing. The fire took a very small amount of mana from her already depleted reserve. It doesn't take a lot due to her consistent usage and training. To her surprise, the thump stayed, but in the opposite direction. Mai looked at Isaac, who was now staring at the fireball in her hand. Can you make it bigger? No, who am I kidding? Isaac sighed. already seeing the state of her wing and the veins in her arm. A clear sign of overload. Best case scenario? Permanent damage. Worst case scenario? All of her blood vessels popped and she died on the spot, gruesomely. How long would you be able to hold that? Probably 5 minutes. Mai gritted her teeth, the pain in her wing growing stronger with each passing second. A headache slowly grew as she realized the situation she was in. The old man shuffled through his bag, pulling out the bottle of grain alcohol and chugging it. Is this really a good time to get drunk? The old man didn't answer. Instead, he continued drinking until the alcohol was only half of the bottle. He then ripped his inner shirt below his lab coat before stuffing it inside the alcohol. The tree sap from earlier. Mai followed him and took the tree sap from her bag, still not knowing what his plan was. Isaac stuffed it inside the bottle and swished it a bit. He turned to look at her and signal her to light the ripped cloth that was popping up from the bottle with her fire. I probably can't cast another spell for some time after this, old man. Mai hesitated. If this plan fails, we are dead. No more light to ward off whatever that thing is. The old man just pushed the bottle against her more. Mai sighed and lit the cloth tip. Their surroundings turned dark in an instant, and the thump grew louder, now back to its original direction. Isaac stood up and threw it out across the grasses. Mai never knew a human could throw things that far, let alone the 72-years-old Isaac. Since when did humans throw things like that? Huh. See, Dad? Those little leagues you put me in were useful after all. Isaac turned to look at her, as if expecting an acknowledgement. You know, baseball? But for kids? He continued, still with a smile on his face. What's a baseball? Okay, so just as the light disappeared around them, another light came. One that is followed by a distant screech and spikes flinging everywhere. None of the spikes land near them. It's time. Mai grabbed the old man, who was still trying to explain the baseball thing drunkenly, to run down the field, rushing through the mountain of grass, with the loud screeching accompanying them both. The two fell from a ledge and, looking up, saw the ship still staying there. The two didn't waste any time to rush inside the ship. We are leaving now, the captain shouted, and before long the ship left the island as quickly as it had come. The two survived, with one fully drunk and the other praying fervently to heaven for her close call with death. Mai wasn't sure before, but now she was sure that staying with the human for the holiday was a mistake.